Good day, students. In this workshop, we're going to go and cover how we're going to go and get some additional open source data from an online source called OpenStreetLab. So the first thing you need to do is open up the project that you've already established. Okay, so this is the project where we had left off. We had created a digital elevation model, a DEM, and we'd gone and set up some parameters for our project. So part of this exercise, I'm going to show you. So the first part is currently we're using, so we've got a DEM that's a certain size. Now in addition, so I'm going to use this for the whole study area. Remember, this will apply more for the detailed side, but this is something that we'll explore later on in our class. So for the project study area, you'll notice that we've got a digital elevation model that will cover that study area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter the transparency of the DEM, and you see you've got a transparency section. I'm going to make this about 40%. So what this does, it's a great overlay to give you, so you're getting two bits of information from this image. For example, you're getting the underlay image, which is the site information, in addition with the height elevation map or the digital elevation model with it. Okay, so you can read this information, you can start working out what is high and low. Okay, think of it as a heat map. Okay, so the darker the color to gray, the higher it is, and as you start going down towards this big intersection, you'll notice that it gets lower and lower and lower. Now there's a lot more detail happening in these areas, but we can add additional information by just switching on the contours. Okay, so we'll get a lot more information from the contours. So you can see these maps work well together. Now the only downside to what we've done thus far, okay, this is the first part of the exercise, is we've got this data set that we've got from an online, so an XYZ tile. We've gone and added this ArcGIS information. Now the only downside is you can't really do much with this image. Once it's in, it will automatically scale. But let's say, for example, if I go to project study area and I want to export this image at a certain resolution. Okay, so I want to export this image. So let's just say the project site area. I need to export this image and make it an image so it's part of the project. So I don't need to keep using this information. Because you'll notice, those of you in the studio or using the computer lab, the internet is slow, and at times this data source, if you zoom in, it takes a long time to load, for example, so it is quite frustrating. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to export this information at a certain scale. So what I like to do is zoom in a bit, so get some good data of an image. So this zoom factor is great. Just remember, you need your project study area. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click on this ArcGIS satellite information. I'm going to say export, save as. I'm going to create a whole new image based on this image below. Now this is very important. Remember, this image source has come from a live database. And you'll find that if you go to information, its projection system won't be set to the native. So you can see here, its current system is not what we're currently using. Okay, so what we need to do is we'll need to create a new image using our project. So our coordinate reference system, CRS in other words. Remember, ours is a projected system, so we'll need to match the system that we've got set in our project. Okay, just remember the code 32775. So currently this is the one we're working with, and you can see we're in the right area. Okay, so all we need to do is right click on this image layer or the link that you want to export. So export, remember this is an image. You're going to go to export, save as. Now this is very important. It would ask, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we want to render the image. Okay, you can switch this on and off, that doesn't matter. I switch off these VRT create tiles. I like to create one image of a certain size. Okay, make sure that you select the current system that we're working with. The next thing is we need to pick an extent of this. How big is this image? So when we created our digital elevation model, we use the project study area, and you'll notice the project study area now is adopted. So make sure you're using the project study area. Now here's where things do get a bit complicated. It wants to understand the resolution. So if I go 1 meter by 1 meter resolution, you'll notice that the image pixel size, so it'll have 3,494 pixels, or columns in other words, so vertical, and then rows horizontal 19. Okay, so that's relevant to the study area. But I might need a better resolution. Now if I make it 0,1, so that's 10 mil. So that maybe that's too high resolution. If I go at 0.1, so that's 100. So if I go 0.1, so that's 100 mil. Remember, this is in meters that we're working. So the resolution per square will be 100 mil, and you can see it's way too much pixels. This will be such a large image. But if I took a guess and said, well, maybe half a meter, that might work. Just make sure that we're going to use the project study area. Yeah, so I'm going to make sure that I'm going to use the project study area. So let's say project study area. Now please note that this is still a very large image, but at least the quality of the image might be good enough to work with. This does taking a bit of playing around, so you're either going to work 0.4, but just look how big the image gets. So the more pixels, or the higher the resolution for the pixel, and that resolution is in meters by the way, the more or the larger the image will be. So I'm going to make it half a meter by half a meter. Now this has to be a GeoTIFF, so you're going to say render GeoTIFF. Now pick a location. Now all of you should have made a location where you've worked. So I've done this exercise already, and I've added this to the Future Africa project, but I'm just going to save this on my desktop just to show you what's going on. Okay, so on my desktop I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this workshop. Now you all need your own folder on your own machines where you're going to work, preferably in your OneDrive. Okay, it's just so that you can't lose the information. So I'm going to say workshop. I'm going to call this Arial Large. So I'm going to go and press save. Now if you enable this tick, it just means that it will load it to your project once it's finished rendering. I'm not going to do that because I want to explain how to bring it in. So I'm going to press OK. Now you'll see that the computer will work. Give it a couple seconds. Now depending on the resolution, the more complex this does get. So I'm going to close this for now. So on my desktop I have a workshop image. Now you can simply just double click on this image. Please note that this is a very large image, and sometimes your machines will battle to open this image. But if I zoom in, you'll notice how it's captured that information. Now if I had to zoom in and I had to measure each one of these pixels, they'll be 500 by 500 millimeters. So this is a good thing to know. If you know the resolution of this image, it means that you can scale it in other software, because you'll have the pixel size. So let me just explain this a bit better. So in properties, I know that I created this image at a certain, this will be a large image, so it will take a couple seconds. I just want to explain how big this image is. Properties. Please note if you're using Windows 11, you might have to go to more options and then properties. Please note that these images do get very large. So that's 104 megabytes, this image. Okay, so let me show you how you use this image in QGIS. So what I can do, if I don't need this information anymore, I can simply switch it off for the time being. Now, if I want to bring that information into my project, I will have to navigate and find it and then bring it into my project. So I'll know it's users. Just remember, a lot of these, it's hard to find your desktop, so you might have to go to users, find your username, and then desktop, and then if I go to workshop, I'll drag and drop it. So what's great about this image is, because it's georeferenced, it will come in at the right place every time. Okay, so I've captured this information at a certain resolution. Okay, just remember that the resolution is quite high, so if you do zoom in, it might pixelate a lot. However, if you're just going to work on a small area, you can export this image again, but at a much greater resolution. So meaning, if I wanted a very high-res image of just this area, I'll do this whole step again and export it at 0,0, maybe 0,1, so 100. So just think of it this way, and this is the best way to explain it, properties. So if I go to information about this image, this is the best way to explain it. So the image is going to have a certain amount of pixels. So 6,988 by 3,600 3,906 pixels in the Y direction, so X and Y. But the resolution is 0,5, so that's 0,5, meaning it's 500 mil. So if you actually wanted to use this in AutoCAD or Revit, you times the 500 by the pixel count, and that gives you the actual size of this image. Okay, so that's quite intuitive to understand. Okay, so you can see it's created this image at the correct pixels. Okay, so if I zoom out, you can see now that this image will load and it's cropped. So the project extents that I've set, look, it won't be exactly the same because remember pixels, it might miss one or two, and you can see here's a pixel of 500. So it tries to get it as close as possible to those bounds that you set by a layer. So the layer extent in essence. Okay. So this is the first step of what I want you to do. So you're not relying on this resource now that uses the internet and you see when it loads information, it goes gray again and loads again. Okay, you just want to limit this problem that you experience. Okay. By doing that, you export the map at the resolution that you would prefer. So meaning this one, because it's on your machine and it's local, it will zoom in and out very quickly. It just means though that you might need different aerials at a different resolution. But if for a large scale study, you can see if I zoom out, I get plenty of information. Okay, so let's combine this information quickly. So in my first steps, you can follow along. Okay, so we've got our contours, we've got our DEM, and now we've got our new aerial in the background. So you can remove this layer if you want to, but for now, I'll keep it in because we might use it later. Okay, now you can see I've created a little study area and I don't need additional information. It's not required. Okay, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get some open street information. So I want the building footprints. This is pretty rough at the moment. Just remember, you can go and digitize your buildings yourself. There are other videos to do that. But I'm just going to show you how to get a lot of this information quickly to start your project. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, it doesn't matter, Chrome, doesn't matter what browser you use, you're going to go and search for OpenStreetMap. Okay, so OpenStreetMap. You do get extensions, but ignore that now, remove from Chrome, I don't need that. So what you need to do is go and find the area that you need information for. Okay, there are plugins in QGIS that will help you do this, but I just want to show you how to use the OpenStreetMap data and how powerful this information can be. Just pay attention to the roads as well. You'll see some things are roads and some, but I'll explain that a bit later. There's a way that you can categorize information quickly as well. Okay, so I'm going to use this information over here. So I want to focus maybe, this is a bit difficult to get right, so just try and pick as much information as you can. So this looks very similar to my view that I was looking at here. Okay, so if I zoomed out to look at the study area, so I need a bit more over the hill here, so maybe that's what I need for now. And you can see all the sports fields. That's great. So I'm going to go to export and I'm going to say export. So what it'll do, it'll export and it will show the extents as well. So it'll export some of the information from this OpenStreetMap. Now this is an OSM file. I'm going to put this in my workshop folder and you can give it a name. I'm just going to call it map. So drop it, voila. Now, if I go back into QGIS, so what's great about all of this data now is if I go back to users, my desktop, it's already open, workshop, and I go refresh, now you'll see that the OSM, because this is the type of database that QGIS recognizes, I can start pulling in. So let's pull in the lines first. What has that given me? Ooh, that's given me all the roads. So move the layer up. Remember, this will work a lot like, see the roads, that's coming quite nicely. Okay, so that's a good start. What I can maybe do is go to right click, go to properties. So I can go to symbology. So maybe I can say, well, let's categorize this information and see what I get. So it'll first ask for some requirements. So I'm going to say, let's see, and let's maybe categorize it by name or highway, railway. So let's say highway, go classify. There it's found like footpaths, so that's pretty neat. Comply. So what it's done now, it's classified all this information into different categories. Now this pink one, I don't know what that is. So what I can now do is in lines, this is just a quick way to try and see So if it's all other, maybe that was all other, and I press apply. Okay, great. So what it's done is it's just pulled in like the roads, footpaths. So it gives a color code so you can see where a footpath is. So this is the first start. This is great. So it's brought this information in. Now you can go and give each one of these a different thickness of lines. Each one of these now you can go and you can change the symbology for this. So now you can make standard ones, you can configure them, totally up to you. So a symbol, you can change the line type, you can change the thickness, okay, and each one of these you can start. So that's a residential road, for example, that's a primary road, that's a footpath, so motorway, footway, cycleway. Unclassified we probably don't need because we don't know what those are, but maybe we need the classified. Okay, so this is a good way to quickly pull in data. Okay, so that's great. That's given me, you can see it ties in with the highways, the roads. You can see all these little footpaths here. Okay, so this is quite neat. This is very, I like this. Now you can even play with certain lines and extract the information. Okay, very neat. You can see all the little footpaths here. Okay, cool. So this is great. So it's giving me some good info. So that worked well. So let's maybe grab the multi. Again, this is coming with some really good data, but maybe I need to classify this as well. Properties. Classify this, so maybe I need to classify this as well. So let's go categorize and let's just see, maybe name, boundary, buildings. So maybe by building, maybe we just want buildings. Classify and let's see what we get. Press apply. Ah, that's great. So I've managed to pull in the buildings very quickly based off this data. So there's a reservoir there maybe. Here's a whole bunch of buildings. Sometimes you don't get all the information, so maybe you must go back here again. So let me just switch off the classification. And let's just see what information we do have and what we don't have. So let's just remove this and go to single symbology, press apply. Okay, so let's just see. Yeah, you see there was a bit more information there that I needed. Okay, but you can duplicate this layer and classify things again and again and again to get what you need. But let's just say multiple for now, and I go to properties. Okay, but I do like this function because you can start extracting information now based on the classifications. And if you're not sure, you can use the eye icon, and whatever you click on, it'll pull up a data set here for you. Okay, so depending your identification results, and it depends how this, it might be floating. Just remember it might be floating. If not, just let me know in studio and I'll try and help you. Okay, but you can see once you click on this, it'll tell you name, and now you'll have all these different classifications. Name, null. Okay, let me just give you a bit more information. If you go to this list here, you can see if it's parking, so you can see amenities, buildings, you can see if it's a building. Okay, tux, here they've given things name. Here you can go and find schools, you can see, okay, it depends how the database. Sometimes you're lucky, you get a lot of clean data quickly. Here if you see it's a building, yes or no, farm. So there might be some things that are not. Then I'm going to show you how to process this information as well. So let me just click away. Just don't worry about the color for now. Every time you bring in a layer, it will just give it a random color, but you can start changing the full color. You can start using some favorites already. You can make this, you can change the occupancy so you can see through, just so you can get a better idea of what's there and what isn't there. But you can see you also get a lot of rubbish with this. So here you might get some buildings or not buildings. So that might be a building or clubhouse. So here you can maybe go and see, okay, what is this thing? Name, LC de Villiers Sports Center, leisure, so it's a sports center. So you can start seeing the classification of these things. That might be a sports field. Let me just see, are there leisure sports center? Okay, so these are fields actually. So sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, it depends. These are all little buildings, let me see what that is. And if it's a building, it might tell you if it's a building or not. Okay, look, sometimes you are lucky. Sometimes these things, I'm going to switch this off for now, I just want the aerial information. Make this more translucent, properties. Okay, let's make this 30. Okay, so these were some sort of little building, or Those look like little fields, research. These look like outbuildings, but I think that's a building. So if you go and say building, yes. So just, as I said, sometimes it's lucky. You'll get a lot of information sometimes you won't. So like there's no information, for example. Okay. All right, so now I've managed to build a lot of information here already. Okay, so this is looking good. What's this little gray line? What's that? That could be a boundary. What is this type? It's a multi-polygon. Oh, that's part of the polygon. So let me just switch off the lines for the time being so that doesn't complete. So that's like a boundary of some sort. That's a boundary. That's a boundary. These are the buildings. Okay. All right. Now the problem that you're going to face now is if I right-click on this information, I go to properties. The first thing you'll notice in information, it's on the incorrect geographical system. So this will never work. Okay, because it's not in meters. Okay, it's based, so it's got no units in essence. So trying to use this information will be pretty much useless. You can't use this information. So you need to reproject it to a new system. Okay. And the data set that it comes in is not correct either. So what we need to start doing is I'll need to start putting this information, I'll need to start extracting this information and putting it into my project. So that geodatabase that we've connected, I need to start copying and putting information in this geodatabase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first, on my geodatabase, I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a new layer. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer that lives with my geodatabase. So I'm going to go to layer, create layer, new geodatabase layer. So you go and find the database. Remember, you need to find the database that we're working, and I'm working with that database. Okay, now what type of geometry? So for this, because it's buildings, polygons, remember this has to be the correct, it has to match the project. And I'm going to call this table name. Okay, so that's great. I'm going to call this buildings because I just want to capture buildings. Press OK. So I'm going to say add new layer. I don't want to override anything. Now if I go to refresh, now I've got a buildings layer, and remember there's nothing in this buildings layer. Now in order to get the information from this layer, and remember we can keep categorizing these things. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go back to properties. I'm going to try and switch off. For now I'm just going to copy everything. I think this is the best way because there's some information we can delete quickly and that'll be easy to do. Then I'll try and keep the rest and then categorize information via sports field. But remember, we can make different layers the whole time. Sometimes that's better practice. So the buildings on one layer, the sports fields on another layer, the boundaries on another layer. I've got the boundary somewhere else that I'll give you. And you can see maybe we can keep that boundary and put that in another. But I have the boundaries that I can share with you. So we're going to get rid of that information for now. So for now, I'm going to switch off the aerial just so I can see what I'm working with. Switch off the contours for now. Good. And study area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select multi-polygon layer. I'm going to use the selection tool very quickly. So just look around. This is the selection tool over here. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go to edit, copy features. Now I'm going to open up the buildings layer, double click, and I'm going to go into edit mode. Sorry, don't double click, go into edit mode. Now I'm going to go and say edit, paste features. So what it'll do, it will take all that information from that layer that I've selected and paste it all into my new layer. So now you can start deleting the information that you don't need. So I'm going to pull back my project study area. I'm going to open that again so I can see the boundaries in which I'm working, and I'm going to open up that site extension. Just remember, sometimes if it is missing, just give it a couple seconds, it'll refresh. Yes, delete that feature, delete that feature. So I just want to get rid of the duplicates. So sometimes you'll find that there's lots of duplicates. Because it's an open data set, you're not always going to get the best data. So you've just got to bear that in mind. Okay, but you can see I've got a lot of the building information already. So if I bring back my aerial photograph, so that's great. So you can see actually I don't need any of that. So you can use a quick selection tool. I don't need, just go to make sure that you select the buildings layer. Just whatever layer you're using is trying to select information from. So I'm going to go and select this information just like that. Don't need that. Delete that. So you can see some of this information I don't need. I can get rid of a lot of it. This I might need, so that area, delete that, yes, delete that. Yes, I've got some reservoirs there. Sure, that's a big building, delete it. You can always undo, so that was a big building, say no. So this is quite cool. I've got quite a good bit of information now. So I've got the building footprints. I've got enough information. There's a building there, there's a building there, some reservoirs there. Here we don't have much, we can always draw that on later. Here's some little buildings again, some buildings. So I'm actually quite happy with this result. So get rid of that, get rid of that. This was a whole building area, but yeah, so that, we just don't know. That was like a park maybe, yeah. So that information, who knows, that was like, yeah. So sometimes there are information, sometimes areas that are sensitive won't have information. Again, you'll notice some of the stuff is not very accurate. So you might find that was an old building there that they deleted later on. Yeah, so just the data, just go to properties, just make this a bit translucent as well, symbology. Sometimes you've got to add data. Okay, you can see this is all out of date, so maybe get rid of that, delete that, that's all out of date, delete that. Okay, some stuff accurate, some stuff no. So just bear that in mind. Yes, delete that feature, delete that feature. Okay, great. Now, when you've got enough information like we have here, you can simply prick, oh yeah, that was another one, delete that, that's a car parking area, that's also. But remember, you can go back and edit the layer again and again. That's a little dam, so that's something else. Okay, so you don't need that. This looks good. The information I've managed to gather here for what we're doing is perfect. Okay, so we don't need any additional information. You can spend hours tracing other stuff, but for now, I'm very happy with the end result. So I'm going to press the save icon. Now, whatever I'm doing here, remember it's pulling back into your buildings. Okay, so that's very important to understand. So for now, I've got some buildings. I've got a digital elevation model. That's great. I've got some contours. Okay. Got some contours. Yes, I think this is slowly coming together. So I can switch off that study for area now. Okay, now that I've got this information, now that I've got the buildings, I've got some study areas. I keep these here in case I want to extract more information, copy and paste it back. Okay. So I'm happy with that for the time being. Now let's just go to the roads. So the roads, now just in addition, if I'm on the building layer and I go to these properties now, you'll notice it won't copy these properties across. So sometimes what you've got to do, if you want to transfer the properties, so I'm going to do that with the roads, just to explain how you're going to convert this, so the lines, for example. If you want to keep the categorization or the database, you'll need to go and say export layer, save feature as. So I've just shown you the quick method to capture data. Now I'm going to show you a more complicated method. So you need to go and find, so we're going to export this lines layer because we want to keep the data. Now it's going to ask you in what data set or what format you want to export this. So I'm going to say GeoPackage, file name. So I'm going to go and find the file. So Future Africa. So I'm going to save this to Future Africa layer name, roads. Now all it's going to do, it'll change it to the correct CRS. Okay, coordinate reference system is going to do that for you. It's going to keep the whole data set for you, and it's going to make sure that it's lined. So whatever type this was, it will try and keep the geometry type. And here you're telling it automatic. You can force it to be a line string, but I know for a fact that it should keep. So in auto, what it does is it reads the information in the file and does it. And I wanted to add it to my map when I'm done. So I'm going to press OK. Now nothing's changed because you'll see that the Future Africa now is just a series of red lines. But if I go to Future Africa Geodatabase, guess what? Here are my roads. Okay, so they're in now as well. And in addition, so let's switch off this one for now. If I click on this guy for now, I can go to its tape. Now you can see it's brought through all of the database. But now this is important. So I'm going to categorize this via highway, and I'm going to do a quick set of different categorization to the, and I'm going to use the road name for example. Okay, so there is information that shouldn't be there. So that we must just get rid of, so whatever that is, for example. But because I brought the data across, I can go to Future Africa, click on that, and it's going to tell me, okay, what is this thing? Well, it's not a name, it's not a highway. So let's categorize this road now. So let's categorize this layer. Remember, this is part of Future Africa, and it's called roads. You can rename the layer in here, by the way. It won't affect the name in the geodatabase. If I go rename layer, I can rename it just to roads, just to make things easier. Now properties. Now let's go and classify. Let's go and classify this information so we can use it correctly. So I'm going to go to categorization. Categorization. I'm going to go and say what field must I look for. It must be a highway. And symbology. So let's just say classify. Now if I press apply, now you'll see what I've applied this classification. I'm going to say anything that has no classification, I'm going to say remove. Okay, so a cycleway, a footpath, a motorway. So now we can go and give each one of these a different symbology. So a secondary road, a primary road, a residential road, because sometimes certain roads have different, they'll have a whole series of. So let's just see, this is South Street Highway, it's unclassified. Okay, so it's an unclassified road. So maybe, so let's go and have a look at those quickly. Oh yeah, one last thing. If we want to add labels to these roads as well, so we can go back here, properties, so let's add some labels. So let's add some labels as well. Labels, we're going to go and classify these. So I'm going to say single label. Just make the label a certain height. So let's just go to text. Make this in millimeters. Please start using millimeters because it was all linked to units. So 0.25 maybe, or 0.3 mil. Press apply. Okay, it's just how high these things are. So 0.3 is typically what we use, 2.5 or 3. Okay, 3 millimeters. So just make this 3 millimeters. Okay, 3 millimeters or 2.5, doesn't matter. Now it needs to know what it needs to classify. So just to say name, press apply. Okay, good. Press OK. Now you see South Street. Now it's put the labels in for you. South Street and Folly. So now you can see all the street names. It's actually starting to find those street names. Now you can also go back to roads, properties. Okay, so properties. Okay, so properties. This may be on formatting. Let's go to positioning, placement. I want it on the line. Press apply. So it's in the middle of the road. Perfect. Okay, so very quickly, I've pulled in some good information. The last thing I'm going to do is just go and style some of this information. You can make all the roads look the same. It's totally up to you. But I would like you to understand that you can classify information and give them good names. So unclassified, let me just see, we might need the unclassified for now. So if it's unclassified, what we can do with unclassified, let's just give it, you can use these presets as well, but simple line, this is very easy. I'm going to make this a dash line. Press OK, press apply. Now with dash lines, what we can also do, it might be a dirt road. It's totally how you want to show this information. Just remember, if you do create a sheet, you can use the legends. You can use this classification in your legends. Okay, so let's just go back to this one. Let's go to the type of line. Now this is great. We can say meters to meter. So let's just assume that this is a 5 meter width. Press OK, press apply. Let's assume that these things are 5 meters wide, and now I can change the color to be like a dirt road. So let's make it like a. So here you can actually go to town and classify these things nicely. Add an occupancy so they're always by default translucent, so it looks like a dirt road. Make this 50. Press OK, press apply. Press OK. Press apply. So now you can see, you can make these roads, you can go and stylize these roads to suit your needs. So you can see the road comes in there, bends, goes back down there, comes down there. So maybe maybe not a dash line, so let's just go and change that a bit more. Okay. Unclassified, so let's just go back there and just make it a solid line maybe. We don't need the dash, so just remember, make it solid, press OK, press apply. Now all the primary roads, so maybe those I'm going to make, so let's get that a good color, make them gray. Just remember, you can add colors to your favorite list. This again, meters, that's going to be 7 meters wide. What I like to do with these types of roads, I like to add another line which becomes the dashed line in the middle of the road. Press OK. Again, that's in meters, and that's typically about 160 mil wide. Okay, that depends, and make those dashed. Okay, press OK, press apply. Now if we zoom out and we find those primary roads, okay, there's no primary roads. That is interesting. So let's just pick this yellow one. What's this yellow one? So that is a residential highway. So I'm going to copy the style. So let me show you how to do that. Go to properties. So let's just go to residential. So what we can do, so let's go to primary. Ooh, that's why it didn't work. So let's just go back. This one, solid, that's the background. The simple line, meters to scale, that should be dashed. Offset, no, that's correct. Press OK. That's not correct. Why is that? Simple line, solid, that's 7 meters. Offset 7 meters. That's correct. This one should be very small. Yeah, 0.16. 160 meters to scale. Color. Okay. Anyway, we're gonna. Yeah. By the way, you can add these to favorites if you want to use them again and again. So you can say copy symbol. Guess what? You can go to residential, paste symbol. So you can apply these to different roads. There we go. That worked fine. So now you can see this looks like a little tar road. Okay, so it's quite amazing what you can do very quickly. Go and categorize these roads. Okay, so it's quite intuitive how these things work, and you can give them names. So now you can see out the bat. Now some of the roads do go over the edges, so just bear that in mind. You can go in and trim the information, but it doesn't really matter because you can export this information and you can clip this layer to suit, but then you've got a lot of work to redo. So for now, I should have clipped this in the beginning, but don't sweat. This information, you can delete this information that we don't need anymore. Just remember, if you're going to edit that, you're going to go to roads, edit, and then you can delete. So all of this information that's gone off the side, delete. Okay, so you can delete this information, delete. Okay, so let's just. Okay, so you can delete some of this, delete that. Wait, deleting. You've got to reset the layer because it's refreshed. Okay, so you can go and add more. You can go and add some new types of lines. Just remember, you mustn't use the rectangle. You should make sure to digitalize segments. So here you can go and add some more lines. It will ask you how to categorize it. So you might have to find, it might have to become a highway. You might have to give it a name. Okay, so just remember this stuff you can categorize. You can do all of this. Okay, now what's important is you might want to put your building lines and roads above the contours. So just remember this works like bump, how you stack things up. You might want to put the buildings above the roads as well. So how things stack up and above. It's just how you want to stylize these maps. Okay, so this has actually made quite a good, it's actually starting to work well. What I also want to do now is lock the scale. So let's lock the scale to 1 to 5,000, for example. So that's the scale 1 to 5,000. You can now lock the scale. So if I zoom out, you'll see that everything maintains its scale. So you get a true reflection of its scale. Just forget, this magnification causes some issues, but let's just lock this at 100. It zooms back to 100. Remember that you can unlock that again, so it locks the scale. Now, if I want to export this to the last part of this exercise, and this is part of the workshop for tomorrow, I want you to go and set up your roads, set up the buildings, okay, and set up your map with your own aerial. You don't have to use this for now. This is the information that we're going to start using, and I want to export this as an image. Okay, so you don't have to go and follow these steps. If I know that this is scale 1 to 5,000, I can simply go and export this as an image now as well and use this information, provided that you understand this resolution function and you understand the pixels, etc. And I'll explain that. So now I'm going to go to project. I'm going to go to export. So I'm going to go to export, project, export, and I'm going to export this as an image. So now this is very important. So calculate from what layer. I'm going to say I want to use my project study area. Here you can, it starts telling you the pixel size, but this is incorrect. I want a 300 dpi because remember, we use this information. Now look how big this image has become. 8,000 by pixel. So now this image has become a lot larger. Okay. So now we're exporting this at 1 to 5,000, my apologies. Layer. Remember layer, I'm using the project study area. Now, if I want to export this as an image rather than going, because I might want to use GIMP to put this on a sheet. Okay, so watch how intuitive this is. Oh yeah, by the way, you can also, let me just show you this as well. You can export as PDF. That makes it, you can export this as a DXF as well. Okay, so that's interesting. But it does come with a catch, so just be careful. We're going to export this as an image. So map as image, 300. And it must calculate from project study area. Good. So now it's going to ask you, draw active, none, yes, yes, yes. You leave everything as is. Now it's just going to ask you for a location to save. We set the extents, everything. So I'm going to go and press save. Workshop. I'm going to call this study. Okay, what I want you to do, so it's you, your student number. Okay, then it's your first name or second name. Please just follow the naming convention that will be provided. So follow the naming convention properly, please. But all I need is your student number. So please just start using this convention. Okay, it has to have a U in front, so it doesn't recognize it as a number, for example, in my database. Just call this. Okay, so I'm going to put this in my workshop folder. I'm going to press save. So this will create an image to the correct scale. So give it a couple seconds. These are also large images, and you want to export this as a JPEG, by the way. So let me undo that. So let me just explain that again. Project, export as. So I'm going to go and say export as image. I don't know why it does this, 300 dpi. Just remember it. It is quite annoying sometimes. I'm going to use the project study area. That's correct. I'm going to go and save. Yeah, so just make sure that you select the correct. Mine was pre-selected. Just make sure it's JPEG. Okay. Because these things don't have backgrounds, if it was translucent, then you would want to make it a PNG so that it writes the alpha channel. Okay, just bear that in mind. So just make it a JPEG. Voila, save. Good. Now, let's go and open that image. So what we have now is a very high res image at scale 1 to 5,000. So this image, and you can see it's telling me how big it is, and it's 7 megs. Okay, so that's a relatively large image, but you can see it's at a good quality that you can use in your presentation. So you don't have to go through the whole process of making a PDF map. So for the time being, you guys can use this information. Okay, so let's just open this in GIMP quickly. So open with GIMP. Remember, you need to upload these to the folder provided. Okay. I'm just going to open up GIMP quickly, and we're going to talk through, because I want to explain the pixel size. And while that's loading, I'm going to open up Inkscape as well. So let's open up GIMP. I have noticed on the lab machines, GIMP does take a bit of time to open, so just be patient. And I'm going to open up Inkscape as well. So we're going to look at both applications very quickly. Okay, so new document. So this is Inkscape. Now in Inkscape, you want to use Inkscape to set up your document, or you're going to use Publisher. Okay, I will share some information for you closer to the time, and Kristen's going to do a workshop for you to help you put your presentations together. But just remember, document properties, I want this to be an A1, so let's just go to A1 ISO. So remember, this is quite new with this version, A1. I want this to be portrait. If you're going to use these images and print with these images on printer downstairs, I would recommend that you go to edit. So edit, preferences, please go to preferences. Now on rendering, on most of your machines, please make sure that you enable, this might be off, enable OpenGL, open that, and just keep all the rest of the settings the same. The next setting is if you go to import images, make sure that everything is 300 dpi. Okay, that's important, especially for the type of work that we do. You can use higher resolutions, but it does come with a catch. Great, so I'm going to close this. Now I've opened this image in GIMP, so I can actually go and edit a whole lot of stuff here in GIMP. I can make changes in GIMP. But what I want to show you is if I go to image and I go to canvas size, you'll see now that this canvas size, if I want to know how big this is, and remember it was a scale 1 to 5,000 in millimeters, you can see in millimeters how big this image is. So it's, if you want this information, there it is there. That's how big this image is. So if I want to use this in Inkscape, so I'm going to keep these settings. So remember that, so in Inkscape, I'm going to go to Inkscape, now I'm going to drag that image into Inkscape. File, so I'm going to go import, I'm going to import this image to make, I'm just going to show you a quick, why you want to bring this into Inkscape and add some information in Inkscape. Desktop, but I'll do another workshop just to help you with this as well. So this is the image I want open. You want to embed this, you can link it, so you can link it to the original image if you want to rework the information. For now, I'm just going to say embed. I'd much rather you do all the work in here, save the image again, and then put it back into. So what you would have noticed is if you pull this back in and you go to image size, guess what? That's 697, 698, so let's see, 698, 698, 785. So this has come in at exactly the right scale. So this image, it's a very large image. This is on an A1, and you can see all the resolutions there. So I might have to rotate this to fit on this. But remember, this is fantastic. So it means that the images that you're exporting from QGIS come in at the correct scale. So now on this A1, so you need to decide sometimes how big these things need to be. Please work with known scales, okay, and use scale bars, etc. So what I can do now is I can right click and go to document properties, and I can change the canvas to, voila. Now, guess what? This A1 fits on here. This is fantastic. Now, what I do like about Inkscape, if I want to do some studies, if I want to document some areas, now I can use the tools. So if I want to do some quick mapping of an area, now I can use these layers. Now this is actually, what we did in QGIS is exactly happening. So now we can do some bubble diagrams, we can move things around, we can draw some lines. So I can draw some lines. I can make these, just remember these are fills. We'll do more of this. I'm just trying to demo this. So I don't want this to fill, I just want this to be a stroke. And I want the color of the stroke to be red. Now in millimeters, I can change the line weight, the stroke width. I can make that 0.5 maybe. So that's quite cool. I can make this dashed if I want to do some type of study. I want to draw over this map, for example. Now I can go and edit the spline. If I want all of these to be nice, smooth, I can make all of these auto smooth. So it means now that if I want to play with these, I can quickly go and follow the road network. So this will give you a lot of power to go and add information to your map, over your map. Okay, remember all of this stuff works over your map, the study area. You can use different fills, you can use patterns. So you can use patterns sometimes. Just be careful with patterns. I've noticed that they do come with a bit of a, they can lag quite a bit, so just be careful. 45. You can use very thin lines, again 45. You can change the occupancies. Remember these things, you can change the occupancy. So there's quite a lot you can do with the software, okay? But this is where you want to take this image from QGIS into your software. These lines, you can make them have, so stroke, you can start with a marker, so if you want to make a marker. So if you're doing annotation on these, and what I do like about this, it comes to the layer structure, so you can put these in different layers. You can control them on and off, you can lock them. Okay, so this image you might want to put on another layer, lock it so you can't edit it, you can switch it off quickly. Okay, so here you want to go and add additional information. Okay, so we can add a stroke around that same color. We can make the stroke green. We can make these dashed. There's so many of these things you can do, by the way. So we use this type of workflow to plan and put additional documentation and annotation on these maps that we're busy building. Okay. By the way, you can change all of these back into splines using sharp angles or straight lines or curves. Okay, so you can make all of these curves, by the way. So this is very powerful what you can do, by the way. I can make all of these. But please go and do some research about Inkscape. You guys should be doing your own research. I can't teach you the whole software, so I don't have enough time. But that's quite neat, okay? And remember, we're working on layers all the time, so I can bring back the layers that I want to see. Okay, you can combine things together. You can make these to the same shape. You can minus them from each other. So path, difference. I can cut away things. I can draw little buildings. So here I can actually go and draw a whole bunch of little buildings. I can make little buildings. I can copy these things around. Okay, so I can duplicate these things, array them. Totally up to you. Okay. So there's a lot you can do using this combination. But here you can also go and add, you can paint stuff, you can add information here as well. But GIMP is where you want to do a lot of the image processing rather than the vector processing. Remember, GIMP is only image. Anyway, good luck. I look forward to seeing all of your exported images of your map with all the roads and buildings. Thank you.